What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Main Event Wrestling Cards podcast. My name is Adam Gelman. I am back after a week off. Had a lot going on last week, so it's important to come back with a nice little rebound here. I am sporting my shirt that was given to me by Stephanie from Mama Breaks, and she had a really good idea when Tox Chrome Cactus Jack came out to offer these awesome shirts that say wrestling cards in my first language. If you are not on YouTube watching this along, you can see it if you are. But I really like this idea, and she did a great job promoting the initial sort of run of her breaks for Cactus Jack. So she sent one of these to me as part of my order, and a few other people. Really appreciate that, and I love this shirt. But I've got a lot to talk about today, and I wanted to get back on the horn and make sure we have podcasts running on a regular basis. If you wanted to catch up on some of the text-based stuff that's been posted on Main Event, you can find us at www.patreon.com/main event wrestling cards. You can follow me on Instagram at WWE Gelman. You can follow me on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, at SC Uncensored. So please like, subscribe, do all those fun things here. And come join and be a part of our conversation on the Patreon group. I would love to have more people as a part of that. So today we're going to talk about a few major things. Obviously, I took a break at the worst possible time because there has been a lot of movement on the wrestling scene. There's been major announcements. We'll get into all of that. Then we'll go into some of the fun stuff that I think we've seen from Top's Finest previews over the last couple of weeks. We'll go into some of the updated markets on Cactus Jack. And then I want to take some time at the end here to do sort of a state of the union with sort of wrestling cards in general and where things are from an overall market perspective. So we'll do all of that today. Really excited for the rundown. Let's start with Monday Night Raw, or even a little bit further back. So AJ Lee has returned to WWE after a long absence, and I could not be more excited. I think just seeing her return executed over the last few shows has been really well done, even though it comes at the expense of the person that I cheer for the most. I think she's playing the role perfectly. And that's what you want out of your heels, right? You want to be able to have the face come in, look like $1 million, do all the things that they're doing right now. It's just been really one of the best stories going on WWE TV. And I think, there's people who are saying, oh, we're tired of Punk and Seth Rollins. Like, I would argue that this feud has legs, first of all, but has been one of the more sort of like buzzworthy feuds over the last couple of years. And with the way Rollins won the title, with the way that Punk has always been the person that has been at the brunt of Seth Rollins's sort of success. His downward spiral has been documented, and this is really sort of the first stage of bringing that back to where he gets his win back. Like, that has to happen, right? He's the baby face. Eventually, the heel has to lose. And I think that they're building towards this over the next couple of shows, or major shows. So I think they'll do WrestlePalooza, which is obviously just, hey, we're going to do a pay-per-view for the launch of ESPN and turn it into this giant thing. Not shocking there. But they're going to do this match. Punk and AJ have to win. I mean, like, I don't see any universe where Punk and AJ do not win this title match, or it's not a title match, it's tag match, sorry. And I don't see a universe where that goes any way but theirs. But from there, I think there'll likely be a one-on-one match with Becky and AJ that leads into probably a War Games where Becky's team and AJ's team will fight or something like that, and AJ will win that. But I think Becky exits this feud holding the Intercontinental title, and I think that they move on from this feud with a very clear picture that at some point Seth Rollins and CM Punk are going to wrestle for the world title at WrestleMania or some big show, and CM Punk is likely going to win. So they're going to build this up. They have almost 8 months to do this. I think that's plenty of time to tell this story. I think it's going to be a good one. But upon AJ's return, Topps obviously wanted to make sure that Topps Now captured the moment, and they did. The print run on the Topps Now card was gigantic. So if you bought into the AJ Lee Topps Now, you are one of your cards are of a print run that is in excess of 14,000, close to 15,000. It's a gigantic print run. AJ Lee has had a lot of cards, believe it or not. She kind of came onto the scene, very early on in the NXT days. She was on the main roster very quickly after that. And so she has like an FCW card. She has some autograph cards. She has that weird bear card with the chopped off head. I mean, like, not my thing, but it's one of her more valuable cards. So there's a lot of stuff out there that you can collect. The problem is, like, it's not very available. So a lot of stuff there. I'll get to that here in a second. But I think like as WWE continues to build up to WrestleMania 42, which again is going back to Vegas, like they have to have a headlining match. And I think like AJ being around and Seth being around, like they're gonna play major roles in that show. They're gonna be heavily involved with CM Punk. They're gonna be heavily involved with Becky Lynch. Like it's gonna go for a while. And I think that's the right call. It is the biggest feud that exists on the card so far. So I think they're still very much in development, building up towards that. War Games is going to be a clear indication of the direction that they're going to go. Usually, the people that win at War Games have featured matches at WrestleMania. So, like, I think this is going to be a really cool time. And there's going to be a lot of collectors who want to get in on it. I've already seen AJ Lee's cards go absolutely bananas. And it's rightfully so, right? People are kind of looking at, like, hey, how do I get my hands on some of these cards? And the answer is you're going to be hard pressed to find a lot of the good stuff. Like it's available if you want to pay through the nose to get it. And like there were some smarter people that saw this coming because they really telegraphed her return more than they usually do. And people were jumping on this early, and those people made out like bandits because now, as they've gotten through some of these first few weeks, you can see those cards have gone up 50 to 100%. So, like, we are a very reactive hobby, and very few people are proactive. And if you ever want to make inroads in making money off of cards, you have to be proactive rather than reactive. Because once you get into a reactive state, you are going up against a lot of people who are in that same situation, and you're going to lose more than you'll win. But for AJ, I mean, she has probably 4 or 5 autographs, maybe more. She has Chrome cards from 2014 and 2015. Like there are superfractors out there for AJ Lee, and those cards would likely be middle between 10 to 20K at this point, I would guess. Like somebody would pay an insane amount of money for those superfractors from 2014 and 2015. The golds from those sets are going to go for a ton. There's red refractors in 2015. Like there's a lot of big cards out there for shiny AJ Lee stuff, but it all exists within this 2014, 2015 timeline. And I think now we have this understanding that Topps is actually going to make more cards for her as she continues to be a part of their roster. And that is freaking awesome. Like a lot of people love AJ Lee and a lot of people want her cards. Going into sort of some other matches on the card, we've seen them building up John Cena versus Brock Lesnar. I think they've already said that that's going to be the main event, which I think is the wrong idea, but that's the direction they go for Cena's, retirement run. I think this is why they made him champion, is because, coming out of WrestleMania, they knew his matches would probably be the main event. And if he's the champion, it makes sense. Now that he's not, and you have this gigantic tag match, which probably isn't going to be like a 5-star match, so that's a consideration for not putting it on last. But like Cena and Lesnar will go to war, and it'll be a huge match, and there'll be implications to bring Lesnar into another feud with somebody else, hopefully somebody that we haven't seen him wrestle yet before. I think it's going to be awesome. It's going to be a great match if John Cena and Brock Lesnar can live up to their past matches and what Cena's been doing lately in his retirement tour. So this is something that I kind of feel bad for John Cena because he's absolutely going to get his ass kicked. I don't think Brock Lesnar loses this match. I think there's likely some level of fuckery that happens here and Lesnar comes out on top. I don't think you can bring back Brock Lesnar and bring back Brock Lesnar and he loses every time he comes back. So I think Cena loses this one. I don't think they wrestle again. So whatever happens at the end of this match is going to set up Brock Lesnar's real feud coming into War Games and Royal Rumble. So we'll have to see how that all goes. But in the meantime, like what has happened to Stephanie Vacquer? Like I don't it's really interesting to see how she has been booked and I like it makes you question like what is going on. Either she had major issues that prevented her from being on the show either injury wise or logistics wise, but they have fumbled this majorly. And I can't tell if it's something that is happening as a result of just general sort of booking problems or if it's something more that was related to an injury or something they couldn't control. It's rare that they start a story like this and it just sputters to a crawl like this. It's without some reason for that. We likely won't see why, but the match seems like it's going to happen, and I would guess there's going to be a segment on Monday Night Raw that will sort of remedy a lot of this. But she was on fire, and like for whatever reason, they've really, due to these issues, have thrown cold water on that, and it's really unfortunate. But I think it'll get back into it, and she'll have an absolutely amazing match with Io Sky. I believe they are positioning Io Sky to be the champion again, kind of not their plan. And this is a plan of necessity. And Io has proven that she can carry things and wrestle amazing matches. So, they'll have her go through the roster of normal people and then they'll set up a feud where eventually they will have planned somebody like Vacquer or a major focal point to take the title off of her and put it on a more regular champion that she's going to function kind of as a transitional champion at this point. She doesn't deserve it because she's absolutely tremendous in the ring, but I think it's hard to tell a story with her. Like they're trying to do it with Rhea Ripley, they're trying to do it with sort of Asuka and Kairi Sane, and that'll likely be her first feud. Like it, it just hasn't landed because the language barriers that exist just make it difficult for American audiences to connect, as horrible as that sounds, which is unfortunate because she definitely deserves better. Um, that's not it though. There was a major announcement this past week that they are going to hold WrestleMania 43 in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and they deserve every bit of criticism that they're going to get for this. The idea that the Saudi Arabian government and the royal family can pay their way to having literally whatever they want because they are the richest family on the planet, it seems like. And, we saw with the Canelo and Crawford fight that Saudi Arabia is looking to make a major splash beyond golf, beyond the soccer, beyond everything. They want to be a destination for sports as a facelift for this awful country. And, as much as I feel for the people of Saudi Arabia who absolutely deserve to have as much of this sort of sports in their backyard, like internationally, like most countries get some level of this without having to worry about the political strife of their country, and they have not. And this is really the first time that I can ever remember where a country like Saudi Arabia has made inroads to get sporting events. I think it'll be a short period of time before the NFL and NBA and all these other sort of sports organizations are wooed to come there and have events. There's just too much money at stake. And so I don't support it. Obviously, a lot of other people don't support it for human rights and women and everything that goes on in that country. Beyond the sports element, they're trying to create an understanding of, hey, we're not a backwards country the way everybody portrays us. And I think WrestleMania having its first international event in Saudi Arabia versus London or one of the other projected sites, I think is a terrible idea. But it's not like many of us were going to go to the London one anyways. It's too hard of a trip for most Americans. It's expensive. So, I mean, but I thought the European fans absolutely deserve it. I mean, they have shown every single show like how invested and passionate they are in wrestling, and I think they deserve it more so than anybody. And unfortunately, they're not going to get it at least for this year. But I don't think they'll do 2 years abroad with WrestleMania. It's just too big of an event. So we'll have to see how that all plays out. But I posted on main event, like, guys, like wrestling is becoming more and more global as it should, because, Japan has always been a wrestling mecca, and they've always talked about Japan as like the only international stead, but man, like the UK wrestling organizations, Eastern European wrestling organizations, there are huge fan bases, and WWE is finally wising up and bringing shows out there, and they've shown why that's such a good idea. And from a card perspective, that will extend the market and bring more and more people into the fold to collect wrestling cards, be a part of our hobby. That's awesome. As I said, I posted on main event, like I think having a more global audience will make wrestling cards more viable as a mainstream hobby niche rather than sort of this dark corner of the hobby universe. And we've already seen that starting to happen. I've done more deals with people out of the US this year than all previous years combined. And so the cards are clearly spreading, and the globalization of wrestling cards is a huge deal for us. So I'm glad to see that happening. I want to move on to Topps Finest here because I know a lot of people are eagerly awaiting it. It's coming out, I believe, in a couple of weeks here. Um, we are still waiting on a checklist, but man, every preview we get shows that this is going to be a really fun set. And I can't say enough about some of the cool inserts and things that they're going to be offering. And, we just got another preview this previous week about the Ulafala, which is basically Roman, Rock, and their compatriots on a set celebrating the Ulafala of the Bloodline. It looks awesome. I cannot wait for these cards. I hope they're crazy rare. I hope they have massive sales attached to them because they deserve it. We've also seen the Dark Energy insert, which is another case hit there. Um, so all of these cards look really good. I think, there's still going to be some level of like, is this going to hold? Is this, what's the market going to be? And again, the chase cards are going to prop up this set, but not like Cactus Jack. Like Cactus Jack, the chase cards are really the entire tent pole of that entire product. Finest will have a lot more stuff to chase. There's going to be base cards with the parallel structure. There's going to be superfractors of every base card. There's going to be a ton of autographs, two per box. Like this is going to be a very traditional type of Topps Finest release as we've seen over the last couple of years. It will not be the same as it was in 2021, but or 2020 for that matter, but it will be a very traditional type of hobby release. I think that's exactly what this part of our hobby needs. But I know there are people out there saying, "Hey, we need a paper product. We need something low end. We need this. We need that." Like it will come. I think Finest should have been the set released probably after the drought. So when we came into this Cactus Jack release, that should have been Finest, or at least a product that had a little more bulk to it that wasn't artificially created. I feel like Cactus Jack, they created a lot of bulk for that product artificially, and it's been a major problem in that respect. And you're seeing that in the market right now for a lot of those things being much more difficult to get a hold of. And I think when you look at the overall bulk, the pricing has dropped. The floor has kind of come out of it, just like it did with other sets in the past. But this feels a lot more artificial, and that's where I think a lot of the difficulty is in moving parts of the set that aren't those chase cards. But man, those chase cards are selling for insane money as we expected. I think I've mentioned on the site like the Superfractor with inscription for Stephanie Vecchera sold for 15,000. Jordan Grace's autographed Superfractor rookie card sold for 10 and a half. Like The Rock had a $5,000 card. Tiffany Stratton has had a, like a giant sale. Like there's been some huge numbers associated with Cactus Jack, but it's all chase cards. And I think if you look at the way that Cactus Jack has performed, it is almost identical to the way that a traditional football or basketball product sort of has. Like outside of Prism and outside of National Treasures, if you look at a lot of those other sort of non-legacy sets like Cactus Jack is, every one of them is insanely propped up by those high level one of one rookies and stuff like that. We don't have that same equivalent in wrestling per se, but the chase cards in wrestling are absolutely the only thing keeping this product afloat. There isn't a lot of other things that is driving major value. I think the only other thing I can point to that a lot of people have gravitated towards are these trans tactician cards, which are case hits, rare case hits that are tough to pull. And those are really the only other cards besides these chase cards, the red refractors out of five and stuff like that, where there's value there. Other than that, I think there is a major gap in between the bulk stuff, 50 and below, and the better stuff, which is like the black refractors and up. Like that only really happens in football and basketball. I think we're seeing it for the first time in wrestling, and the collecting public just does not know what to do with it. And I think like when breakers are trying to move slots, they're trying to move these massive case breaks instead of sort of understanding how the market is reacting to this. They're not adjusting slot prices because they're in at a higher price than a lot of this is going for right now. A lot of the breakers who don't have direct accounts are buying on secondary market prices. They can't fill breaks at that point. Like things are taking really, really long time to fill. I think I've seen CSL, Card Shop Live, I've seen Fanatics, Big Breakers, like they can move product, but they also have a lot more flexibility in this. Whereas the kind of the breakers that are lower down on the totem pole are really struggling to fill because they don't have the viewership, they don't have the flexibility in pricing, they don't have sort of those other things to offset the losses here. So they're still trying to move it up here when it's likely more easier to move down here. And that's where Cactus Jack, that's where the collective dissonance exists. And I think it's a problem. I don't think that's going to happen as much with Finest because there's two autographs a box. It's more traditional. It's not artificially bloated with additional parallels and inserts and stuff. So I think like in that respect, Finest should be a lot easier for people to move. But listen, Finest was designed as a huge release. So Cactus Jack was likely designed as a small release that they delayed and printed more cards and added to it. So now it's like a giant case run of like 3,000, 3,500 cases, whereas Finest was designed to be 3,000, 3,500 cases. So you're going to have a lot more product flow in these breaks. They're going to be more traditional. People are going to identify with that. So I think Finest will likely perform much better. It's also a legacy product that Topps had out at probably about half the price. So in the end, the boxes may cost the same when you buy them on the secondary market at this point. So Finest will be $350, $400 a box. Cactus Jack will be $350 a box. And if you compare the two, that's where there's a major problem with collectors saying, well, I don't want to pay $350 for a box of Cactus Jack when I can pay $350 for a box of Finest and get better cards. And I think the idea that Cactus Jack also has this WrestleMania version that is so much better in terms of value and exclusivity, all of those things, like it just can't compete. And like there's a lot working against a product that, like Cactus Jack, whose designs only appeal to a very specific part of the hobby and whose structure is hard to understand for a lot of people in the hobby. Like those things are going to cause issues with the collecting public. So just keep that in mind. I think Finest is much better buy. I think Tops understands that. Cactus Jack served a role to keep resources down and creating the set and everything like that. Like there's a lot of reasons why Cactus Jack is what it is, but I think Finest will be the product that people have been waiting for. I want to close out today with kind of a state of the union, and this is one of those things that I know there's a lot of people out there who are gonna have a very yes or no reaction to this. And I think that's where a lot of the people who are on social media, the people who are on the mainstream social media platforms, are really going to have a better understanding of where a lot of this stuff is versus people who don't spend as much time on Instagram, Twitter. They're spending most of their time in Facebook groups that, have smaller populations of people. They're not seeing as much of the discourse and the narrative that's being created online, or they're getting their news from people like Sports Card Investor or like really mainstream hobby platforms that don't get the authentic sort of understanding that many collections are built off of a an off ramp of that freeway, right? So like Sports Card Investor is going to give you the USA Today version of everything. Which if I just dated myself because it's a newspaper and no one reads newspapers anymore, but the USA Today is like, we're going to give you the news at the highest possible level so that no matter who you are, no matter what walk of life you come from, you be able to understand the general news of the day. It's not the Wall Street Journal, which tends to be much, much more in the weeds on specific topics, or even The Economist, which is even further into the weeds in that respect. I think that's where a lot of us on the mainstream sort of social media platforms where we're getting really, really deep into it. And if you're listening to this, if you're on my website, you're probably one of those people, but there's a lot of others that are not. And so I think let's start off by saying, number one, with a bullet, this market is in a really, really good spot. Wrestling cards are selling at a higher volume, at a higher average price. Everything is trending in the right direction because for the general sports card situation, that's exactly what's happening over there as well. So if you're collecting basketball cards or football cards, you are absolutely in the same boat. And the difference now versus in 2021 and 2022 is the lag time between something happening in the mainstream hobby and that thing happening in wrestling cards is much shorter. So it used to be something would happen in the NBA and it would take months and months for wrestling cards to catch up. I think that time has shrunk dramatically. And beyond that, I think there's just a lot more people understanding what's going on, so they're becoming more adept at navigating the different things that are happening across the market. So people are more likely to want to invest and put money into it so that they can not miss out the same way they did in 2020 and 2021. That's where a lot of this sort of FOMO really does help bring prices up. The other thing is that there's a bunch of repacks now. So wrestling repacks have caught on in the last few months, and you have online versions and Blez breakers who have built a digital online platform for repacks. Those have ramped up. They're consuming the top level singles for those types of products. You see it across a number of breakers on Whatnot and Fanatics, recognizing that there's a massive gap that exists within repacks and wrestling and filling that gap. I know Alex and Breaker Mayfield has his own repack. I mean, like, there's a bunch of people that are buying up bulk to fill repack products. That helps the market move up. Now, sustainability in that respect is probably a big question mark. And I think that's where a lot of people are wondering, is this a bubble or is this something that can have long-term staying power because people love gambling and repacks are basically gambling. So I tried some of the online repacks from Blez and they are dangerous. Like they are easily, you can spend a ton of money without even realizing like how addictive these things are. So I get the appeal from a breaker perspective, from a market perspective of creating these gambling opportunities because it caught me and I was like, wow, these are really dangerous. So I understand that as those businesses ramp up, it will supplement the market spend on some of these inserts like case hits, flawless, national trend, like all of the stuff that we love, they will capitalize to make that part of these repack products. Secondly, because breakers are finally getting to a point now where they are ripping the majority of wrestling product on a regular basis, wax prices are significantly up as well. You can't find Panini products anymore for an affordable price. It just doesn't exist. And so you can maybe buy a box of Revolution from 2022, or you can buy NXT 2.0, sure. But when you want to buy Prism Select, Flawless, all of the really important products like Immaculate and stuff like that, Impeccable, good luck. Those products are insanely expensive because everybody wants to get in to this burgeoning market that is blowing up by the day. And I think that will continue. So good news in that respect from, hey, people who are holding cards, holding product, great. For everybody else, this is probably the worst possible news that exists. No one likes when wax prices are up because it limits access and connection point with the one thing a lot of us really love doing, which is tearing through packs like it's our job. And I think when that becomes harder, when that becomes a challenge to get access to affordable wax, people get frustrated, and people really don't like when things go crazy the wrong direction on either side of that. So when wax drops really fast and you buy it at one price and a week later it's $100 cheaper, or the opposite, they want that middle ground. I want it to stay where I bought it. I want to be able to continue to have access to wax. Like that's the dream here. They want affordable wax that doesn't change in price. And unfortunately, that hasn't happened since 1995. So like let's just be honest here, like the market doesn't function that way. And especially when you have 100 different breaking channels all competing for the same level of a product run, that's why Topps is putting out 3,000 cases of Cactus Jack, because they've recognized that the market that they started with in January is not the market that it is right now, and it's not the market it was in 2022. Like there's so much more demand for breakers, there's so much more demand for individual collectors, and the competing prices are driving things up. Even though the singles may come down, you can buy a box of Select for $550 or $600 from 2024. There are very few cards in that product that are going to get your money back. So I think that, like, overall, we have to be very conscious of how these prices do not necessarily reflect the contents of the boxes. So good news and bad news there. Better news is that if you have equity in your collection with big cards, cards of people that are desirable and rare, like those are selling for big money, bigger money than they've ever sold for. And so the more desirable people, the Tiffany Strattons, the Stephanie Vicaire, like doesn't matter who it really is. If you have those cards, they are worth more today than they were a while ago. And so if you want to use that equity to improve your collection, this is the best time to do it. This is a seller's market in that respect. And you will have an opportunity to take some of the cards that you have in your collection and turn them into more cards than you would have been able to years ago. And what makes that interesting, and a lot of like wrestling collectors don't think this way because wrestling is a heavy collector niche, is that they just want to acquire, which I completely understand because I'm the same way. But for a lot of people who don't have the budget or funds to expand their collection, that equity can turn into additional cards that you get for more money now because you did not pay $100 for the card that's now worth $800 or whatever. So that $700 in equity you can use. And hell, if it comes down to it, you can always rebuy the other cards if the sustainability of this boom doesn't hold. So from a State of the Union perspective, that's really good. That's a buyer situation. But those cards that are rare, those cards that are hard to find, like I get it. Like no one wants to give those up. I don't either. So I'm just saying this, like if you are hurting for money, if you are hurting for ways to use your collection to your advantage, there is no better time than now. My one thing that I think is really bad right now is the education level across our niche is still really low. And when I say like the further you get from these social media channels where people are doing more homework, doing more of their own under like developing more of their own understanding, like the further away you get from sort of I'm online, I get it, I'm talking to these people, I see the trends, I look at prices, like not everybody has those resources available to spend time doing that. And in wrestling cards, it seems to be more and more a problem than in other sports. Now, at a scale, there's many more people in other sports that are uneducated, but from a percentage or per capita percentage, like wrestling cards has a higher uneducated percentage, in my opinion. And that really causes issues because you go on to places like Reddit or you go on to these smaller Facebook groups and people just have these ridiculous takes that I think are completely unfounded in reality. And like it creates a narrative like it's always been this way, so it should always be this way. And like, I don't necessarily think that that's the best for wrestling cards because if you're going to try to grow it like I am, if you want to grow wrestling cards, and not everybody does, people like it small. There are fish out there who are like, I like being a medium fish in a small pond. I don't want to be a small fish in a big pond. For me, I like having more people around. I like having more people to talk to. I like the companies investing more technology in their product because they see more people and more demand. Like to me, the benefits of having more people in this hobby far outweigh the benefits of a small time sort of niche where very few people are involved. Not everybody sees it that way, especially as you get further from the mainstream here, because they want to get cards cheap, wax cheap, everything cheap, so that I can do what I've always done. And I completely understand that mentality. I don't agree with it, but it's something that a lot of the education level doesn't understand why a superfractor with an inscription autograph is going to go for $15,000. I see people saying, wow, this card sold for this much. I can't believe it sold for this much. It shouldn't have sold for this much. It did. And the reason for that is because there are market stipulations that exist within each product that is released, where there's basically what has come before, potential for the future, and all of these different things. And if you're not regularly engaged with a lot of the areas of mainstream sports, wrestling cards, mainstream product communications. You're not talking with people who are in the know because you don't want to be a part of that culture. Completely get it. Like, not everybody wants to make wrestling cards their job, nor should they. But in order to really take advantage of some of the market trends that exist to have the best collecting experience, sometimes you have to find that edge, and that edge is education. And the reason I say that is because even if you're not somebody that's going to be making money selling wrestling cards, you want to get the stuff for your PC as cheaply as possible. And that means proactivity instead of reactivity is such a key element. You can't do that without education. And in reality, collectors just have this very black and white stance on their allegiances. So they're either a Panini person or a Topps person. There's very little in between. I get today's atmosphere and political culture creates this us versus them mentality that has to exist in every walk of your online experience, and that has transferred over to cards tenfold. It hasn't quite gotten there with wrestling cards, but the further away from the mainstream you get, those black and white allegiances rear their ugly heads. So I think that's probably the biggest negative right now is that people just want to fight about specific things because it's entertaining and not because it provides any outcome or discourse that makes any sense. It's just like, hey, I want to be entertained. I want to argue with people. That's just who I am online, blah, blah, blah. So that's what they do. And that's creates a lot of problems more than it solves. However, one of the other things that I think is needs to be improved is the variety of which cards are being produced. Now, personally, if every set was chrome, every set was shiny, I wouldn't complain. That's my collection. I love that stuff. But for the general market, there needs to be more variety. There needs to be premium products, chrome products, paper products, you name it. All of those things will come. Right now, it's very heavy on chrome products. We're seeing a little bit of chrome fatigue. So from a an understanding of Topps, I know that they are trying to get more products in the works that are going to deviate from the plans that they've already released for Finest and Cactus Jack and Topps Chrome and Sapphire and all these things that are all shiny products. This other variety stuff is coming. It just could take a while, and that's where I think people get impatient and they'll start saying things and doing things that are probably not in the best interest of this hobby, and I think they have every right to do that in a lot of cases. But as we get going, I think just from a State of the Union perspective, like looking back on this time 2 years down the road, I think this will be a blip in the overall radar here. I don't think it's going to be a large body that you look back on and you're just like, wow, this really changed the course of everything. So I think this time is transitional. I think this time is something where the market itself is booming, but the overall sort of hobby area is very in a transitional nature. And I don't think that that's going to change here until likely the beginning of 2026 when we start to see what Topps is going to do with their first sort of full year of planning in place to lead to a calendar year that is going to have more products. It's going to have more variety. Hopefully, the means of production will be solidified. The team resources needed to design and produce these products is more solidified. NBA and NFL are going to come under the Topps banner, so they'll have a lot of reason to do everything well. We'll see WrestleMania again. We'll see WWE World again. We'll see new outlets like Dick's Sporting Goods coming into things. The NFT market has been booming. I've seen massive sales on there, five-figure sales for Panini NFT stuff. Like overall, the State of the Union is good. And I think we are in a spot where people are cautious because of what happened last time around. They're cautious because they see this as a bubble. Some of that may be true, but I think there are elements of this that have real staying power. And that's where I think as a collector, if you do your research and you have that education level, you can make sense of that and not overextend yourself, not get over your skis. You'll have more of a constructive approach to building out your PC. And I think that that's really good. I think that's something that we need more of in this hobby. That's it for this week. Thanks to you for sticking around and listening. Again, join our Patreon group. Everything is free. It is www.patreon.com/main event wrestling cards. Again, you can follow me on Instagram at WWE Gelman. You can follow me on Twitter at SC Uncensored. Please become a part of this conversation. That's what makes my role in this so much fun is I get to have conversations with collectors all over the world. And I look forward to it. So I'll see you guys hopefully coming up next week. And again, this has been a lot of fun, something I've been meaning to do for a long time. So I'm really excited to offer this on a weekly basis. Thanks, everyone.